Welcome to r/Reddit Revenge. This is a story of someone getting back at someone with revenge after being wronged. And today we have 3 great stories, so subscribe, hit the like button, and let's begin. The first story. Landlord manipulates renters, asks for roof repair in sale deal. Revenge ensues. The second story. Young firefighter disrespects a lieutenant, bragging about taking advantage of her kindness. I shame him by sharing his toxic behavior with the entire department, causing him to quit. The third story. Coworker is a jerk, so I change his keyboard to a different mapping so he can't get back into his computer. And the first story is, landlord wants a new roof. Let's go back 2 years. My wife and I were looking for a rental and got referred to a house that was for sale, but the owner was open to renting the house out. He gives us a quick tour and tells us 2 prices. A lower price and a higher price, which includes a stove and refrigerator. He eventually failed to provide us the appliances but still kept the higher price. He also mentioned that he lived in a house behind us. Apparently both houses share a water line, and to save us trouble he would pay for the water bill. Keep this in mind. The first year of renting went smoothly. After our contract ended, we decided to stay another year. This is where things started to go downhill. We started to see how manipulative he really was. He wouldn't get us a yearly contract but would do a month-to-month agreement promising he wouldn't kick us out. He kept our deposit and continued to charge us the higher price. Never fixed our leaky hot water pipe but asked us to close it. He would threaten to sell the house, telling us to not be alarmed if we seen a for sale sign outside. He did this for another year, so we would always be worried whether or not this would be our last month or not. So my wife and I hatched a wonderful idea. He's wanting to sell, why not buy it? We're already living in one of the houses. We ask him what he wants for both homes. He wants $150K. What a steal. But there's a catch. He's afraid his home won't appraise for the sale price because he needs a new roof and wants us to pay for it. Red flag number 1. We tell him get it in writing and lower your asking price. He gets a lawyer to write him a contract and conveniently leaves out that he would reimburse us if our deal falls through. Plus he can back out whenever he wants. Red flag number 2. Finally, one day while talking, he slips up and tells us he owes 2 years' worth of house taxes. So if he did sell to us, we would have ended up paying for those. Red flag number 3. Revenge. After months of going back and forth and the deal falling apart, we find a house and close within a month. We stopped upkeeping the rental, turned on the leaky hot water pipe, and are leaving with a 1-day notice and will be turning in our keys instead of handing him money. He tried to screw us and now he's got to fix his walls, his pipes, and will not be making money since the house will stay empty. Edit number 1. He didn't want to come down on his sales price, and he didn't have the money to fix his roof, so he asked us if we could pay for it. We agreed, but only if he would come down on his price depending on what we spent. As a precaution, we wanted him to reimburse us in case he backed out. His contract said he could back out at his discretion. He didn't want to go through a real estate agent, and he only wanted us to fix the roof with a contractor of his choosing. We secretly had someone else inspect his roof, and we discovered 2 huge sinking holes through the ceiling. He also didn't want to let us conduct a home inspection. This was a learning opportunity for my wife and I. We learned about the entire buying process and what to look out for. We're getting our first home tomorrow. This couple's landlord was manipulative, greedy, and downright shady, so they did the only logical thing. Buy the property and stick it to him. And the cherry on top, leaving the rental in shambles and giving only 1 day's notice. It's hilarious that the landlord was so desperate to sell that he tried to make the tenants foot the bill for a new roof, and then conveniently forgot to mention that he owed 2 years' worth of house taxes. Maybe if he had been a decent human being, he wouldn't be stuck with a trash rental property and no income. But as they say, karma's, well, you know. Congrats to the couple for getting their first home, and for teaching their slimy landlord a lesson. He'll think twice before trying to screw over his tenants in the future. The next story is, young firefighter disrespects a lieutenant, so I shame him and get him to quit. I'm not sure if this is pro or not, but I got revenge on a D-bag I used to volunteer firefight with. This was in the early mid-2000s. I decided to going into the local fire department as a volunteer firefighter. I did it for about 5 years and it was great. Training consisted of 3 months of fire training, 2 nights a week and all day Saturday, and then you would go to EMT training, another 3 months of training. I was about a year, and I was asked to help train some new recruits. One of the lieutenants, Amy, was a short, middle-aged woman who was so full of fire she could make a grown man cry. One of those people who commands both fear and respect wherever she went. Honestly, a great lieutenant and great person. When she wasn't being a drill sergeant, she was extremely kind and generous. She would often bake people cakes and treats and deliver them to the various stations of our department. However, in this new academy class that I was asked to help with, there was a cocky kid that we will call Aaron. Aaron talked big during the training and acted like he was the all-American hero, like he was going to be the lead bad A in Backdraft 2. He performed moderately well in training, but far from the top of the class. He gets assigned to Amy's station, which is a pretty quiet station in the department. A few months after he starts, Amy swings by my station one night to say hi. She brings us the Motherlode cake from Claim Jumper. Massive 6-layer cake. She explained that she had treated her crew to a night out at Claim Jumper, which must have cost a lot of money. I think she took out about 8 people and bought a whole cake to top it all off. They had eaten the first 2 layers, so she gave us the remaining 4. We thanked her profusely and she left. Back then, the big social media platform was MySpace, and I decided to look up some of the people in the department to make friends. I came across Aaron's page, and I noticed some photos of him and the rest of his crew at Claim Jumper with Amy. However, when I read the comments, he bragged about how he had purposefully ordered the most expensive dinner, appetizers and drinks, since Amy was buying. He bragged about how he was going to take advantage of her stupidity. This alone peeved me off because she was doing this super nice and generous. What an ungrateful, selfish D. Then I read the rest of his profile. He had videos and memes on his page glorifying himself as a bad A firefighter, bragging about running into burning buildings and how he was such a hero. He was flirting with girls, blatantly trying to impress them with how brave he is. Bear in mind, he just graduated from the academy 3 months prior and hadn't even gone to EMT school. He had never been to a house fire, and all he basically did was carry gear for the other fully qualified firefighters. It was too much for me to tolerate. So here's the revenge. I printed off copies of his MySpace page, including his comments about Amy and toxic bragging. I made multiple copies and took them to every station in the department. We all had pagers, God I'm old, and a small keyboard at each station to send out text messages. I made an anonymous all-staff page to everyone in the department. I had to keep it brief since I couldn't fit a ton of characters, but I sent out his MySpace info and told everyone about how he treated Amy. Within an hour, Aaron had cleared out his MySpace page of all posts, photos, etc. A couple of days later, he deleted his account. It's a good thing I made so many copies. Immediately after this happened, he stopped coming to volunteer, and a few weeks later, I heard that he had quit. I later talked to Amy and admitted I was the one who sent the page. I told her I hated how she treated her, and she thanked me. She seemed really sad and hurt by what he had done. But being the tough, short lady that she was, she quickly got back into being an actual bad A firefighter. She later started dating and married a fire chief that also helped at the academy. I've lost touch with her, but I hope she did well. She seemed pretty happy last time I saw her. This was back in the day where people were still very trusting and naive on the internet. Social media was very new and I was still using chat rooms at the time. I remember those chain emails that people used to forward along with surveys asking all sorts of questions. As a teenager, you thought it was fun, until you start realizing that it's really fishing for security question info. Ugh. Arrogance and disrespect can have consequences, even in a seemingly harmless volunteer organization like the fire department. The young firefighter Aaron not only disrespected his lieutenant's generosity, but also went as far as boasting about it on social media. OP took the initiative to print out copies of Aaron's MySpace page and shame him throughout the department. Aaron may have thought he was invincible, but his arrogance ended up costing him his volunteer job. It's testament to the power of the internet, as OP was able to spread the word about Aaron's behavior quickly and anonymously. In the end, it's heartening to see that the lieutenant was able to move on from the incident and become an even more bad A firefighter, while Aaron just left. The last story is, be a jerk to your coworkers. Good luck getting back into your computer. I was reminded of this incident talking with an old coworker of mine from when this happened. Back in the very early 2000s, I got hired for a local but fairly large software company to do tech support for one of their business software products. At this time, the company was growing quickly, and they hired a lot of support engineers over a year to keep up with the workload. I was the 4th person to be hired on this product support team, but over the next year or so, we grew to 8 total. Now, the first 7 of us got along great. Even though we were working our butts off because of the workload, we had a great time doing it and the company treated us well. Then number 8 came along. Let's call him New Guy. New Guy had done software support before, and he had a very know-it-all attitude from the first day he moved into his cube. Normally, a new person would do the product training, then sit with one of the veterans for a few weeks listening to their calls and learning how to troubleshoot and such. Not New Guy. After the product training, he already knew everything and was ready to start taking calls right away, so our manager gave him the go-ahead. Our manager at that time wasn't bad, but he was fairly hands-off. Sure enough, after a few days, he started coming to those of us who had been there longer and asking questions related to the issues he was getting. And honestly, we are always happy to help someone learn, as long as they're gracious about it. Not new guy. No thank yous, just an "oh yeah, that's right, I knew that." After a while, we wouldn't stop helping him, because ultimately we want the customers to get their problems solved, but we started giving him the minimum information to help. Now our company had a policy that you were supposed to lock your computer whenever you left your desk. We weren't all that diligent about it and would regularly leave it unlocked, if we were just running to the bathroom or going to talk to someone else down the cube row. We'd usually only lock it for our lunches and after work. New guy was even less concerned about it than the rest of us, and would often leave his computer unlocked when he went to lunch. One day I was on the phone with a customer I'd worked with repeatedly, and knew their environment fairly well, and he came over and was casually listening to the call. When I hung up with them after getting a description of their issue, he started trying to tell me what the problem was and how I was an idiot for not solving it right then on the phone. I calmly explained to him that what he thinks is not what the actual issue is, and I needed to do some testing to figure it out. He gets all peeved and tells me I'm gonna feel like a moron when it turns out he's right and walks away. I'm pretty frustrated right now, and decided at this point I'm gonna screw with him. He leaves for lunch and as usual leaves his computer unlocked, so I go over to the window and watch him walk to his car. He would always eat out for lunch. Once he drove away, I went to his computer, downloaded a little DLL I needed to make this work, went into his Windows settings, and remapped his keyboard to Dvorak. Then I locked his computer and went back to my cube. For those of you who may not know, Dvorak is a keyboard mapping that's designed to put the most commonly used letters near the home row, so it's drastically different from the common QWERTY mapping, and I think the only letter that's in the same place in both is A, so hitting a T on the QWERTY keyboard would actually produce a Y with the Dvorak mapping. The rest of my day was as glorious as I listened to him fight with IT trying to figure out why his password wasn't working, and why the password resets weren't working. They eventually just re-imaged his computer, but I took great pleasure in listening to his frustration for a few hours. Fortunately, he left a few months after that. Edit. Yeah, I've done the screenshot of the desktop background too. Just to mess with a friend though, not for revenge. Changing mouse sensitivity to either really high or really low is fun too. Best slow burn prank I got on a colleague was to go into Word and change the autocorrect dictionary to change common words like the or and to curse words. It took months before my coworker needed to write a Word document, and it was hilarious listening to him trying to figure out why curse words were appearing in his document. The new guy's arrogance and lack of gratitude for his coworker's assistance ultimately led to his downfall. While it may have been satisfying for OP to play a prank on him, it also shows the potential consequences of not treating others with kindness and respect. I have to give it to OP though. Remapping the keyboard to Dvorak is a genius move. It's like a harmless prank, but with just enough annoyance to make it memorable. Treat others with kindness and respect, and always prioritize security in the workplace. I hope you enjoyed these stories. Don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel.